I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, June the 26th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. You know it. David Williams has produced the program. You'll be speaking with David when you pick up the phone and give us a shout to get in the queue and get on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So I want to give a shout-out this morning to Team NL Pierce Panthers Robotics. They're attending the first Lego League Florida Sunshine Invitational at Daytona Beach. So it's a robotics competition. Big good luck and way to go to Abby Grady, Darcy Burry, Ethan Pike, Jared Young, Landon May, Liam Baker, Ryan Evans, Sidney Fowlo, Tanner Butler. Their mentors are Jordan Beard and Amanda Hollett. They participated in the fall of 2024 at the Junior High Schools Newfoundland and Labrador competition at Kona, were gold medalists, and now here they are after raising $40,000 to get to Daytona Beach. And one big, massive shout out apparently to Sadie Parsons, who gets things done. So good luck and enjoy the competition. And it's the last day of school. School is out for summer today. I'm not sure what time the kids are being dismissed today, but of course the teachers have their one administrative day yet tomorrow to wrap up their school year. So anything education in the world of review of the year that was passed and the work that has to be done over the summer and what to expect for next year, you know me, happy to talk about education. All right, I want to tell you about a young fella named Malcolm. What's Malcolm's last name? Malcolm Hollett. Okay, let's go back to 2015. Malcolm was 14 years of age. He was at a family ski trip at the White Hills Resort, and it took a devastating turn. After an accident, he had a severe spinal fracture, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors said he may never walk again. Fast forward to this year. Malcolm Hollett was at the start line for the Telly 10. It was his first crack at it. So after being told he may never walk again and all the operations that he's had to get him back on his feet, it's a story of courage, resilience, fierce determination. He's got his mobility back and consequently his independence. So he completed 10 kilometers. That was his goal in the Telly 10, which is, of course, a 10-mile race. So, Malcolm, good morning to you. And congratulations. And bravo. You know, it's those examples of grit that I think go a long, long way to give people who have suffered similar severe injuries to know that it's possible. And Malcolm Hollett is the absolute optimum example of that. So way to go, Malcolm Hollett. If you're listening this morning, love to speak with you on the program to talk about your journey from 2015 to through 10 kilometers at the Telly 10 race. There's some good news to get our day going. There you go. Also, the fire ban provincially has been lifted. So people who would like to have a mug up or a backyard fire or get the charcoal barbecue going for the weekend, you can do it. Still worthwhile reminder to know that we all play a role with our personal responsibility to ensure that we're not reckless or careless or inadvertently responsible for some of the fires that we've seen throughout the province. And yes, for the folks in Adams Cove, we're still trying to get some information on your behalf as to what government support might look like, availability of the Federal Disaster Relief Fund and the like. So if you want to talk about it, let's go. All right. Coming up pretty early in the program this morning is the province's Auditor General, Denise Hanrahan. Every time we speak with Ms. Hanrahan, representing her team at the Auditor General's office, we use the same adjectives. Scathing report. And this one is absolutely that. And this is about healthcare contracts, specifically travel agency nurses. Okay. I'm willing to concede that at a moment in time, the province absolutely needed to bring in some of these travel agency nurses. There were distinct issues regarding staffing amongst registered nurses in the province, and the backfill that was provided by travel agency nurses was required. Get that out of the way. Then you look at some of the numbers. I'm not going to steal all Ms. Hanrahan's thunder because there is a lot to this. Basically, since 2022, the Health Authority has paid out over $241 million to 11 agencies. The average cost for a registered nurse working in the public system who's in the middle of their career is around $118,000 per year. For the agency nurses, costs in the neighborhood of $400,000 per nurse. All right. It's going to be difficult to put the genie back in the bottle. We have been told that the province has a strategy to reduce its reliance on travel agency nurses, but the money is absolutely not going down. In 2024, we spent $132 million on agency nurses to fill said gaps. That's up from $18 million spent in 2022. This is where it gets worse. I mean, that's one thing. $400,000 per nurse. We can do an awful lot in the world of incentivizing people to work in the public system. Then there's the possibility of fraud. I hear Minister Crystal Lynn Howell say, they'll institute some safeguards, and same thing from Dr. Pat Parfrey, the CEO at NL Health Services, talking about some of the work that's already ongoing to do a better job on this front. But when are we going to be able to find ourselves in a moment of time where people working in the public sector are a little bit more careful with the public purse? You go back to some of the invoice splitting at the school board, and that was all bad enough, and a couple of people did indeed lose their job. But if we're paying out illegitimate expenses, we can't even prove that overtime that was billed was actually worked. Electric vehicles rentals, accommodations, all these things which we don't have the required paperwork to back up a lot of the money that's gone out the door, this is pathetic. It truly is. So Minister Howell says it might lead all the way up to possible dismissal and maybe some further investigations if there is indeed fraudulent activity that has been identified and consequently should be passed over to the law enforcement agencies, the RNC in this case, for further follow-up. Even the folks who are responsible for handling the money, to make sure we scrutinize the invoices, to make sure that every single cent that goes out the door, which is taxpayer money, is absolutely been verified as to its veracity and its merit until that day comes. We will continue, in conjunction with the Auditor General, to scream from the mountaintops. This is infuriating. It gets even more mind-boggling or head-scratching to me, knowing that, look, it's not your money, it's our money, and you're a taxpayer. Whoever the people are responsible for looking at these invoices and writing the checks, you're also a taxpayer. So in addition to putting the boots to the rest of us, you're putting the boots to yourself. Like, how can this go on? So how can it possibly be in this digital age and with all the level of mid-managers and high-level bureaucrats and ministers responsible that this can happen? I mean, can this not be as outrageous as it is for me? For everyone listening to the program this morning. So I'll let Denise Hanrahan tell the tale. And then in addition to the travel agency nurse contracts, which, look, again, I concede, at one moment in time, they were required. We could not see emergency rooms shut down. We could not see different floors and different wards of different hospitals be without the required level of registered nursing staff. But the questions here are massive. What can be done about it is, well, we'll let Denise Hanrahan talk about recommendations and to try to shore up the world of looking at travel agency nurses. And then, of course, there's other contracts. Teladoc and the now private operator coming in the fall for the integrated road and air ambulance service. Also, I don't know if Denise Hanrahan has had a look at this, but we need an update from the provincial government about the contract let back in 2021 about Change Healthcare Canada. They were brought in to look at healthcare scheduling, collaborating with the health authorities, of course, which now there's only one. The hope was to improve operational efficiency and anticipated cost savings. The software to be created to look at reducing staffing costs, overtime, sick time, payroll errors, keeping labor. All right. $3 million up front, a $35 million deal, but it gets even more curious that the Healthcare Authority will have to spend and pay Change Healthcare Canada $5 million in penalties if they don't achieve 95% adoption of the program within the organization. An update on that front would be helpful, I would suggest. What do you think? But Denise Hanrahan, coming up soon. And apparently there's an ongoing review of core staffing inside the world of nurses in the province, and that's going to be interesting to get a hold of as well. All right, let's keep going. So there's a second round of compensation flowing to the victims at Mount Cashel, and justifiably so. So this one is going to be in a total of $14 million, of course raised through the sale of churches and other assets that were so-called belong to the Roman Catholic Episcopal Corporation. All right. So the compensation for the claims will be somewhere between $8,000 and $126,000, minus the legal fees of some 40%. We do know that the estimated compensation is going to run well in excess of $120 million, and only somewhere next to almost $50 million has been raised through the sale of the assets. That includes money coming from the province, some $13 million to buy the schools, which no one has ever been able to explain to me how and why that happened as well, because the schools, as per the legislation, as long as they were used for educational purposes, we would not have to spend money as a province, as a taxpayer, to buy the schools back, but we did. Then begs the question of who's going to fill the gap between 50 million and well over 100 million. It's eventually going to be me and you. It's going to be the government. And I understand the compensation is absolutely due. Nobody, I would imagine, begrudges anybody who was a victim at the hands of the evil perpetrated on them at Mount Cashel. They deserve the money. Of course they do. But where does that shortfall get compensated for? I would imagine it'll be eventually the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. And let's keep going. All right. So we see the docket regarding domestic violence. We see the docket regarding sexual assault and other types of assault at the province's youth. And now this story. We'll leave some of the names out of it because it's the concept, it's the issue versus the names. Some 20 years ago, this young fella, at the tender age of 11, reported that he had been sexually assaulted by an adult. And at that time, this person was 30 years of age. Fast forward 20 years later, he's now been arrested. The concept of understanding who is so vulnerable and may indeed fall prey to these sexual predators, because the stories are not remote. You factor in the Bruce Escotts of the world, who's pled guilty, so he did it. He's also said an agreed upon statement of facts that his co-conspirator, his co-evil perpetrator, Tony Humby, who has not seen his day in court as of yet. We're told they're working towards some sort of plea agreement, but Mr. Escott said Mr. Humby did it. We also know that in 2007, Tony Humby was pulled over with teenage boys in his vehicle. People came forward and alleged that Tony Humby had sexually assaulted them. They were minors. No arrest happened until very recently. I don't quickly go to, we need public inquiries at every turn. But on this front, I think we probably do. We have to know exactly what goes on here. Have protocols changed, whether it be inside the department, whether it be at the Child and Youth Advocate's office, whether it be at the levels of the RNC and the RSMP, as to how and why some of these allegations that came forward, no arrests were made until years later, when more and more victims were piled up underneath these absolute evil monsters. What goes on here? And I know we've heard some opposition parties calling for a public inquiry. Hasn't been any further comment offered by the government other than a review to be done, in part using the Child and Youth Advocate. But man, those stories are just unbelievable and they don't stop. Changing gears a little bit. We all know that the most recent election was plagued with problems and controversy during the pandemic when mail-in ballots became the go-to and it didn't work. So as a result, John Abbott steps down as the member for St. John's East Kitty Vitty. Remains inside his ministerial portfolio, and he's not going to run again. All of that story was just kind of unveiled as this was part of the settlement. What's the settlement? Are we not worthy of understanding exactly what was decided here between the Premier, Alison Coffin, and anybody else involved? And of course, an everyday voter was also part of this suit. We also don't know as it pertains to, for instance, Sheila Fitzgerald, who was defeated, Jim Lester, who was defeated, the people who won those districts, Crystalline Howell and Lucy Stoles. I'm not suggesting that any candidate did anything wrong, because I don't think they did. They lived through the same plagued election that we all did, and they came out the victor based on the vote results tabulated that night. But what is the settlement? I mean, I really think we are due an answer to that question. What is it? How does it pertain to whether it be Sheila Fitzgerald, Jim Lester, Lucy Stoles, Crystalline Howell? Because we know how it pertains to Alison Coughlin and John Abbott, sorta. And I don't even know exactly what was achieved by said settlement, but it would be nice to know. And maybe, just maybe, one of these days soon, we'll get exactly that. What do you think? All right, a few quickies before we get to you. So people wonder about when or what the future holds for Canada Post, and also about when that forced vote is going to be. The federal government has said they are going to make the 55,000 unionized postal workers vote on the last offer coming from Canada Post. We don't know when that's going to happen, but it'd be nice to know. DHL Services Express has reached a tentative agreement, so that takes some of the concern of the backlog that's apparently piling up regarding parcel delivery. That's out there. But I'd like to talk about Canada Post. Yesterday, I don't even know how it was brought up during a phone call, or maybe it wasn't a result of someone mentioning the cell phone coverage, but we had a dropped call yesterday because someone was on a cell phone. Again, I'm never really surprised as to what piques the interest of the listener and the emailer, but since that conversation that got dropped via cell phone yesterday, I don't know, 6 emails overnight, all about cell phone coverage and the problems that people are experiencing. Yes, we do know that the province has gone to tender for some coverage of some 10 dead zones that are pocketed throughout the province, but people want to talk about cell phone coverage apparently. Well, they certainly do in my email. Hopefully you want to talk about it on the show. A couple of quick ones before we get to you. So we do know that the 32-member alliance, that is NATO, agreed yesterday, consensus. Well, there's a couple of outliers about defense spending. 5% of GDP. All right. So the target is to hit that number by 2035. It equates to about $150 billion a year. And we can get to how and why that ended up on the agenda, but of course GDP is a floating target. You never know. If the economy improves here in this country between now and 2035, $150 billion could be $180 billion, could be $200 billion. And these arbitrarily selected numbers out of thin air, you know, a little bit more justification about how this works is probably worthwhile coming from either the NATO meetings and or the Prime Minister's office. And then the Prime Minister's talking about the infrastructure, because it's 3.5 is direct military spending, 1.5 based on defense infrastructure. And of course, probably a very good idea to bring the Coast Guard spend into that envelope, exactly where it belongs. But he's also talked about critical minerals. What exactly? Not entirely sure. But we have been wondering and waiting for a while to understand what it looks like in Labrador particularly. We're sitting on a fair swath of these rare earth minerals, these critical minerals, which are in demand throughout the entire world. And of course, we needn't focus in on what will be used specifically for an electric vehicle battery, because a lot of what you're looking at or listening to this morning does indeed have components that are based on critical minerals, and we haven't. In addition to that, we have not done a very good job in this country insofar as secondary processing, tertiary processing, the supply chain control that we absolutely can indeed do, a focus on domestic procurement, but the 5% of GDP to be spent on defense is pretty remarkable. Then, unfortunately, we have found ourselves in a place where we're asking other world leaders whether or not they will abide by Article 5, which is an attack on one is an attack on all. And specifically the American president, who kind of wavered on it. He eventually said, yeah, he's in, but yeah, you know. All right. And Bill C-5, which is the fast track of of nation building projects, it's in the Senate. It's very likely going to pass and get royal assent, but there's still pretty big questions about the responsibility inside of one minister's office for all the decision making. People say to me, look, the world of consultation takes too long. The federal government has already said they reduced the time frame for approvals from 5 years to 2 years. And then I get plenty of people telling me that, you know, why do we have to spend so much time, for instance, consulting not only provinces, but specifically, in my email, is Indigenous groups? Well, the reason why we do is because it's in the Constitution. So you may or may not like it, but it's absolutely enshrined in the 1982 Constitution of the country. So that's it. You know, opening up the Constitution, whether or not you're talking about term limits in the Senate or abolishing the Senate or what the role of the monarchy might be or consultations with First Nations groups, all in the Constitution. And we all know that opening or reopening that is a devilish tale. We're on Twitter or VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back from the break, the province's Auditor General, Denise Hanrahan, is in the queue, and then it's you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on line number 2. Say good morning to the province's Auditor General. That's Denise Hanrahan. Good morning, Denise. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Welcome back. So, I mean, I read as much of the report as I could stomach, I will say. And I don't even know where to start this morning, Denise. I know we're focusing on travel agency nurses, and we'll finish the conversation and talk about some of the other contracts you're going to have a look at. But if you had to pick something that jumps off the page to you, what is it?
Poor management. Just a total lack of respect for spending of public money when you look at it from an administrative point of view. It has nothing to do with care. It has to do with paying an invoice without the backup, not negotiating for work you don't need to pay for. It's just poor all over from my point of view.
Before we dig into some numbers, there's mentions of things like Agency A. How can we not name said agencies?
So for our office, historically, the audit's not about the provider of the service, and we did have a conscious decision about that here because we know some of our colleagues have named vendors, and everybody has their own rules. But I was concerned that if I named the vendor, and I think the vendor is known in the media, I think it's been talked about who has what contracts, and our ATIP legislation certainly allows people to access information with respect to that. But it almost takes away from the findings because the discussion then shifts to about that vendor. And my issue isn't so much what the vendor tried to do, it's what they were successful doing because we let them.
Let's talk about value for money spent. So inside the world of procurement, unfortunately, that has not been a go-to driving or guiding principle for the provincial government in a variety of areas, a variety of different departments. When you mentioned the possibility for fraud, can you give us some specifics?
So one of the areas where we started to raise that concern that this was a conscious decision to potentially defraud the provincial government was related to electric vehicles. And what we saw was that Agency A had a related company, and they made a proposal to the central region to offer them a service for nurses to use electrical vehicles in that area. The region said no to it and said that we are okay, that's fine. But ultimately, Agency A started to invoice for a few cars and got paid. And then the invoices got bigger and more, and we ended up paying for over $500,000. And we identified all kinds of areas where the vehicles were assigned to a nurse, but we know that nurse wasn't in Newfoundland and Labrador that day, or the nurse was only here for one day out of a week. And so there was things there where it would appear there was a conscious decision to bill for work that wasn't performed, and for us that is certainly would start to look like potentially trying to defraud the provincial government.
I know you're not law enforcement, but are you recommending that some of these instances be turned over to law enforcement? Because the possibility of fraud is not just about process and protocol and structure inside the provincial government, it's about a potentially illegal act.
Absolutely, and our audits, we give our auditees, so in this case Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services, all the tools and information that we have, that we found in our audit, for them to take whatever action they feel is appropriate. So, for example, we have a very specific recommendation that says you should do an immediate comprehensive review of all the amounts paid to Agency A since that first contract in 2022, and then they should try to get as much money back as they can. There is a 3-year audit though in those contracts, so I still think there is some time. And I do think that there is some areas here where potentially they could go back and get credit and get a refund. But the real challenge, I think, for some of this has to do with signing a contract that had very vague language in it, which means you could be on the hook to pay for things that you know you didn't get.
And to be unable to even verify things like overtime payment out the door, that we can't even verify if overtime work was actually conducted. You talk about the monies here. So $241 million to 11 agencies since 2022. Are all the contracts similar insofar as vague language goes?
We found that a lot of the contracts use the templates provided by the agency. And, of course, for Agency A, who got paid the most money, had the most variance when it came to hourly rates for nurses and seemed to charge significantly different things than the others, their contracts certainly benefited them. We did look at the other contracts from a base rate perspective, and they were closer to what some other jurisdictions might have been paying, that excess of $100 an hour, which was seemed to be the going rate. So Agency A for us was a bit of an outlier in that it had so many red flags over those span of those couple of years, and to say it was disappointing to see the amounts that were paid, the lack of documentation, and just the acceptance of not negotiating for rates was really, really disappointing.
How do you determine whether or not anything was negotiated? Because, I mean, we can look at the contract and the final signatories too, but when you say that things weren't negotiated, how do you determine that?
So Agency A's pitch with respect to service was they were selling a group model, which meant that you weren't hiring just a travel nurse, you were hiring a team. And in that team were administrative resources that we know NLHS or their legacy organizations back in 2022 had. These were virtual resources for support to those nurses. I would have expected in negotiation that the health authorities would have said, we don't need that service. It was worth about $18 million over our audit scope period. And we would have expected them no different than any other contract or any other vendor who proposes to give you something. So, for example, in my world, we may have a vendor who chooses to do audit work for us who says, I will charge you for a laptop. And we'll say, no, you can use our laptop. I won't pay for that. So these are everyday things people negotiate with vendors as part of signing a contract where you're only using public money to pay for what you need and not for what you don't need.
Let's talk about the role of rent, because accommodations and other, I think, questionable expenses are also part of this. When you talk about that, there's some almost $2 million spent out for these travel agency nurses at a 90% premium. What do we need to know?
So, when we looked at the accommodations issue, it came up as part of the NLHS's response to conflict of interest. And we had understood that they had done retroactive exemptions and that they had explained to us that they felt that these were emergency circumstances and they were thankful that people came forward, and we appreciated that. But when we started to really look at it, we realized that the organization as a whole, outside of this, wasn't even telling their employees about their requirements under the legislation. They weren't making them sign a code of conduct. They weren't training in it. And then when you do a retroactive exemption, you're basically saying it's okay to break the legislation. I'll forgive you in the future. And then when we went one step further and started looking at what we were paying, it was shocking to find that, we were paying $3,000 in the Corner Brook area for a space for a nurse to live when the average per CMHC was about $880. So the lack of a public procurement process, resulted in us spending far more money than we needed to spend.
We'll look at the travel agency nurses as per this report, but you and I have spoken many times over the past years and previous Auditor Generals. Is it fair for me to say that this type of lack of oversight and monitoring, this sort of laissez-faire approach to public procurement and the protection of the public first is systemic?
I don't know if I've done personally enough work to say that it's systemic. I have seen lots of parts of government that do a really good job, that are very appropriate with how they put in processes and procedures, and there's lots of good work getting done by good people. It is challenging when you look at a particular area in an audit like this one, where you see some very basic failure, and it makes you nervous that we're missing something else. So, it's been one of the reasons why my office has gone very strongly in the direction of doing the financial statement audits, for example, for the bulk of the public service, because sometimes that gives me an indication that there may be some problems in the front line, in some kind of control or something like that. The challenge is, of course, is that in a financial statement, I'm only trying to make sure the statement is reasonable for a reader to rely on, which means the materiality or the dollar values that I look at are so high. So for NLHS, you're in, $80 million land before I start to have a problem. When I do performance audits, though, I can zoom in and I can look at these types of things and identify issues that I, to be honest, am surprised by, in that I've had lots of years in government. I've never seen someone that would frequently pay an invoice without the backup to support it, because at the end of the day, it's public money. It's if I treat it like it's mine, I certainly would never pay a bill without knowing what I was paying for.
So inside the world of recommendations, I'm not putting words in your mouth by saying, we need to shore up the structure or the processes for invoices to be paid out, but specifically what has to happen here? Do we need multiple signatures on invoices? Is there a standalone agency that should be responsible? So what can we specifically do to make sure that we kind of curb this as best possible?
So we made 15 recommendations, and happy to say that NLHS accepted them all, and we understand significant work has been underway. That's the advantage when we're out doing an audit, when people identify areas. So certainly I'm hopeful that all 15 get implemented within the 3-year window we give. But we've been very specific in this audit about looking at making sure that, from an invoice approval perspective, that you segregate the duties, which is really important for us, that the person that says the invoice is, the product's been received and the price is right, is different from the person that says it's got to be paid. Those are all normal controls for us. But really, most of this is, pretty routine government practice. And I'm hopeful that as NLHS moves towards consolidated computer systems and controls, that these will improve. My worry is that right now and for the foreseeable future, it is all frontline manual processes, and that's when we're at the most risk for waste or loss of public money.
Okay, just bouncing around here a little bit, and my apologies. Let's talk about conflict of interest and conflict of interest rules. So you and your team have identified 49 health authority staff violated said conflict of interest rules because of lease agreements. So they're not required to sign on to this agreement. So what's the recommendation there? Because it's one thing to say, oh, here's a slap on the wrist. It's quite another to violate something that you've signed on to with understood consequence.
So we have asked for, from a recommendation perspective, that they ensure that all their employees understand their roles and responsibilities as public office holders under that legislation. And we want to make sure that they ensure that they are compliant on an annual basis. And we've also asked for them to go back and look at any contractual relationships that they have. I mean, the Act is pretty clear that a public office holder should not get any benefit from their employment. And if they're not sure, they need to disclose it and discuss it, and we have lots of mechanisms to do that. In this particular case, though, when we dug deeper, of course, as I said, we found out that employees aren't trained in this. This is not something that the health authorities before or after amalgamation asked their staff to sign. And so, as a rule, it is almost like a cultural issue of, do you understand that these are not the appropriate ways to act? And we know right now today that they have fixed some of these. Some people have gone through this public process where they can be included, and there's lots of processes for dealing with conflict of interest. My challenge now to the NLHS is, but are you getting the best value for money if you're paying for rent in an area where CMHC says you're overpaying by 150%, for example?
Boy, oh boy. Last one. So this is all about travel agency nurses in phase 1 of your audit here. What's next? Because we have the Teladoc contract, which is relatively new, but then we have huge contracts, like for instance with the Compass Group inside the healthcare system. So what are you looking at next?
So that's what we're currently scoping out right now to see where we go. We knew that the nursing contracts was a beast to itself, and the report, I think, shows that, quite a detailed one. But yeah, so we're looking to see which contracts are next, because we do know that there's a bunch of services that are contractual relationships with the health authority. And so hopefully in the next few months now we'll have that nailed down, and our plan is to have the next phase of this report out next year. To certainly continue to dialogue on this topic.
Is there anything I've missed this morning that you'd like to highlight before we say goodbye?
No, I really appreciate the chance to talk about it. These reports are quite an investment I'm sure you've made in time, even just to read them. We try to make them as easy to understand, but this one has a lot of line-by-line things, and so I think we have given NLHS a roadmap for how to make the system better, and really at the end of the day, that's how I prove the value for the public spend for me, is to show that we can make this better.
Appreciate your time and the good work. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Denise Hanran, the province's Auditor General. Break time. And your thoughts on that or anything else, welcome after this. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the PC member for Stephenville Port Laporte. He's the leader of the official opposition. That's Tony Wakeham. And good morning, Tony. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Patty. I wanted to follow up and discuss the latest report from the Auditor General. This is an absolute scandal, and I think this all started with a call from a Liberal lobbyist to the Premier's office, which resulted in a contract with a Toronto-based company that the Auditor General has pointed out that we have paid $400,000 on average for every nurse, and at the same time, our own nurses were making a little over $100,000. And adding to that, the Auditor General points out the number of times casual nurses who could have filled in, who could have worked, were given layoff slips and said because of a shortage of work. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, and I think, beyond that initial call and that initial contract, we're now talking about 11 different agencies involved in the spending of some $241 million since 2022. In the world of $4 billion in healthcare, that's not the biggest line item, but what it speaks to me is structure, process, and protocol. So we can focus in on the numbers all we like, and that, of course, is important because money is money, but it's the structural issue, which is obviously seemingly broken, and the people who are willfully doing what they're doing and not being careful with the public purse, that's the bigger conversation to me. It's not about travel agency nurses, it's about how government operates with my money.
That's entirely right, and let me tell you that no health authority would have signed any contract unless it was approved by the minister or the premier. When you're talking about spending money at a health authority and entering into these types of contracts, so where was the due diligence done when we were entering into that contract? How can you, as a minister of health, approve a contract without doing your due diligence to make sure exactly what it is you're entering into? And we're finding out significant issues with these contracts in terms of the terms of the contracts, the type of things we were paying for, and then of course we add on all of the things that we, quote, were billed for that we never received.
Yeah, so, we can point out what Denise Hanrahan has written and what she's had to say here on the program this morning. Then the most important part is next steps. Every single time we get a report from the Auditor General or anybody else, in this case, NL Health Services has said they accept the recommendations, where do we start to plug the holes?
Well, for me, it goes back almost 2 years ago. You can go into look at Hansard in the House of Assembly, where our critic Barry Pettin grilled the Minister of Finance on these expenditures. We knew about this 2 years ago. 18 months ago, I wrote the RCMP and asked them to do a review to get involved here, because this was known back then. And yet, this Liberal government was not proactive. So now we have 15 recommendations, and they say they're going to act on them now. This should have been done 2 years ago when this was actually identified. I heard the Auditor General talk about an immediate comprehensive review. My question is, why did this Liberal government not do that 2 years ago when this type of expenditure was identified? Why has it taken the Auditor General to issue another report for the government to turn around and now decide we're going to do something? That's the issue here. When you have issues brought to your attention, when you are aware of these issues, the government has an obligation to correct that, to do their investigation, and to make sure that these type of expenditures were under control. But they didn't do that comprehensive review.
Yeah. What always confuses me in these circumstances is that there's, I don't know if it's people who are oblivious or people who are incompetent, and not just at the ministerial level, throughout the senior bureaucracy, but for any politician, any political party to be able to come forward and talk about the guardrails and the safeguards to ensure these things stop in their tracks. There's a massive political victory here available to whoever's willing to do it. Same thing when we talk about campaign finance reform, these types of things which might be not necessarily advantageous to the party, but would be best for governance. There's something available here that someone at some point in time is going to have to seize upon.
Well, what we've got to talk about is how we have measures in place and controls in place. You're absolutely right, to make sure that when we enter into contracts, we know exactly what we're entering into. And when we approve invoices, we have the controls in place to make sure they're balanced. And that's why we have internal audit functions in government. This is where we ought to be looking and talking about how do we make sure those controls are in place. One of the biggest frustrations, as you point out, is that there are lots of recommendations being made but never acted upon, and that's got to stop. And that needs to be addressed right away. We cannot be talking about stuff 2 years later. We ought to be proactive and making sure that we do things up front. And there's a big challenge right now in our province in that whole procurement piece for just that.
And do things like what? So, I mean, of course, you'll be campaigning to form the next government whenever the election will be, very likely this fall. So where would you start? And what would you pledge to do? And how can we hold you accountable for said pledge that you're going to offer here this morning?
A couple of things right off the bat. First of all, is the openness piece, is the making sure that those controls are in place. So when something is identified, you don't turn around and wait. This issue was brought to the attention, as I said, almost 2 years ago. They actually did have the Comptroller General do an investigation. We were never able to see that report that was done. Why weren't we allowed to see that report that was done? That should have been made public right from the get-go. So I am committing to making sure that every time we have these in place, we follow the Auditor General. We make sure that the recommendations of the Auditor General are implemented on a timely basis, not just in this particular case, but all of those reports that the Auditor General has, and come forward every single year with examples of recommendations that have not been implemented or are waiting to be implemented or have go by for 2 and 3 years and have been implemented. I'm willing to commit and make a commitment right now that we will work on every one of those and make sure we report back to the public in Newfoundland and Labrador. We shouldn't have to depend on the Auditor General to be accountable. We ought to be able to do that as a government, and that's one of the things we need to do. Same with public procurement. We need to go and investigate. Why are companies turning around now and saying the fix is in and they're not going to bid on contracts? Why are we only getting one bid on contracts, huge contracts that we're issuing? How do we turn around and lease a hotel for 3 years for $21 million without going to public tender? These are the things that are happening with this Liberal government, and I intend to change that and have it make sure that if we're going to spend public money, that we go out and we do public procurement, and we look for competitive bids, and we do RFPs, because this is where all this breaks down. When you do things in one-offs all the time, you lose control of the money, and then you lose control of what's happening inside those contracts.
Appreciate the time, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty.
Take care. Tony Wakeham is the leader of the official opposition, the member for Stephenville, Port to Port. Let's take a break. When we come back, Bill Hines in the queue to talk about the Bay St. George Sports Recognition Program that Bill's been working on. Great stuff there. And then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Bill Hines. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you doing this morning?
Best kind. How about you, Bill?
Oh, not too bad. Hard acts to follow.
Fair enough.
Anyway, a little bit more positivity from Steveville area anyway, about my project of sports recognition. Right now at the Steveville Dome, we have 20 different sports recognized, and I should finish up the 20th one tomorrow, hopefully. And from there, I just want to send out a few thank yous to a couple of the sport organizations that made donations to the project, and that would be the Bay St. George Powerlifting Club and Taekwondo Club. They made a generous donation, each one of them, and greatly appreciate it. And just as Mr. Wakeham was on before, I had the chance to walk him around the dome and show him what the project was all about, and he was impressed, to say the least. And I also had Mr. Scott Reed walk around, and we spent about an hour and a half and walking and looking at all the different articles. And he said, even though I don't know a lot of the people here, being recognized, he said, it makes me want to look and read, but it made me feel good.
Absolutely. So what kind of contributions from those two organizations?
Monetary.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So, and people are coming forward, like families that have people that's being recognized and stuff, and they're coming forward and making donations, sort of thing, right? So it's a real feel-good project. I'd also like to give a shout-out to Mr. Bruce Andrews from Grand Falls. He did a similar project at Joe Byrne, and it went over really well. And I'd like to thank the business community and all the people in the area that have supported the project so far. Just a little tidbit that I came across the other day was Jonathan Bennett from Lourdes. He was 15 years old. He won a gold medal in the National Wrestling Competition in Ontario. And I'm sorry I don't have the date for that, but I'm researching that, trying to find a date. But little tidbits like this it's just amazing what went on.
Yeah, I mean, with all the big things on the go and all the very difficult and emotional and traumatic issues, I really welcome this call. Just because you and I know exactly what we're talking about, let's go back to how this all began, exactly what you've been able to achieve since you started this Bay St. George Sports Recognition Program.
It started with my son. He was home, and we went out for a skate, and he walked around the rink, and he said, Dad, he said, there's not much history of sport or hockey in the rink or anywhere around. So we talked about it, and we came to the conclusion, well, let's start a Facebook page first, in which we did, and that's gone extremely well. We're getting as high as 30 and 40,000 views on some of the articles that's being posted. So from there, we said, yeah, okay, let's go, and we went to approach the town and asked permission to do something at the rink. And as we were talking about the project, we said, well, there's lots of sports that are not being recognized and no place for them to be recognized. They don't have a building that they can use. So we decided, well, let's do all the different sports we can. So right now we're up to 20. So it's a big project, but it gives people a taste of what happened in the area. And I had a gentleman from Cornerbrook came out and he with his granddaughter to watch her tournament, and he texted me later on and he told me, he said, Bill, I appreciate what you're doing. He said, it's amazing. He said, to be able to walk around and just see the history of the area in sports. And like we got history from 1933 right till the present day, which is amazing.
You mentioned some 20 sports that have been covered. Are there any others out there that might not be as popular but still do have a history and a background in your region that you'd like to add to?
I've been trying to research a lot of the lesser sports like volleyball. There's not a lot of information on all this, and it's hard to pinpoint because right now, like disc golf is starting to become big. Pickleball is starting to become big, but they're not established yet as like the other sports. So we still have room that we can expand if we have to.
Volleyball is massive. It really is. There are more girls playing volleyball than any other minor sport in the province. Right.
The thing is now is that the history of it is not there because it wasn't in the papers as such, and it's hard to get the information about all that, especially around here, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, fair enough. And if I can be of aid on that front, because I have a real soft spot for volleyball, it's the best court sport. I know people think it's basketball, it's volleyball. If I can come up with some info, I'll be happy to share it with you, Bill, and I appreciate the update this morning.
No, appreciate it. Just a little more information for the people around that when they come up to the rink and walk around is that we have 60 people from Bay St. George in 12 different Newfoundland Sports Hall of Fames. So, you know, we're well representative. And as well, we had the first male athlete of the year, Jim Gallant, in weightlifting. He beat Blair Tucker, and Blair at the time was a top-notch swimmer from St. John's. So, you know, these little things that people may not know about, and they're more than welcome to view all this at the Dome. I also like to say that if they want to view, because of the stadium being closed right now, that if they want to make contact with me, I'll make arrangements so that we can walk around the stadium and have a look and let people enjoy it.
Awesome stuff. Blair Tucker, Townie, won the only gold medal that we won at the 1977 Canada Games in the pool.
Yeah,
he just
exactly.
came back to the province this past year to watch his daughter swim for Munn. I think he said it's the first time he's been back in the aqua arena since he won a gold. So there you go.
Oh, wicked! But we also have. I'm not sure if it was 77. I believe it might be the same Summer Games. We had a wrestler, Tom Chechant, and I can't find any information on it, but he won a gold medal in wrestling. So, if people out there are listening and they have any information on that or a picture or something like that, I appreciate if they just post it on the Facebook page. I can get it from there, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But it's going over real well, Patty, I must say.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it, Bill. Appreciate your time this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, man. Take care.
You. All the best. All right, bye-bye. There we go. Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Good morning, Sharon. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm very well. How about you?
Oh, I'm pretty good, thank you. I'm just calling. I'm calling from the Valley in Nova Scotia, actually. Calling about my mother. She lives in Central. We had an issue. She had an issue with her car. She took it into a dealership. Doesn't matter which one. And they told her she towed it in from rural and paid $400 for that, which was fine. Then she took it to this garage. They called her the next day saying it was fixed. She got her sister to go pick it up for her. She's a senior, by the way. She's in her 80s, on a fixed income, of course. And she went to pick it up, and they got it. They're going to drive it back to her, and nothing is happening with the car again. The exact same thing that was wrong is still wrong. She called the dealership. She explained to them. They said, well, we fixed what we thought was wrong. They replaced the starter, which was just replaced just over a year ago. So then she couldn't get anywhere with them. She said, well, I just gave you $700 to fix it, and you didn't fix it. He said, well, bring it back in. We'll look at it again. She said, but then I have to pay for that. He said, yes, you do. So anyway, so I called a general manager, got the runaround. He talked to me like I was an idiot. And I explained to him what had happened. He said he didn't know anything about it. I was told that this one was a manager, that one was a manager. They were giving me the runaround when this person was just a new employee, wasn't even a manager at all. And I'm at my wit's end. I don't like this woman. She doesn't have a car. And is there any recourse? And I know these people are not on the Better Business Bureau. I've looked at a lot of reviews with these people, and there was one guy there, a veteran and a senior, and they charged him $2,500 for one thing, and then had him come back in and want to charge him another $4,900.
Yikes.
At my wit's end. And I'm in Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah. If they're not a member of the Better Business Bureau, it does complicate it. In this province, complaints about businesses and how businesses conduct said business, you could do it through the Department of Digital Government, Service NL. Also, there's an organization in this country called the Canadian Motor Vehicle Arbitration Plan, CAMVAP, so CAMVAP. If you Google that up, they're an arbitrator. So they deal with issues like vehicle repair and the application of vehicle warranties and material defects, those types of things. So between Service NL and CAMVAP, that's the next place I'd go.
Okay. Yeah, I just want, my heart, I've worked with seniors for many, many years. I'm in nursing, and I'm just flabbergasted that I know it goes on all the time, but I'm just flabbergasted that this actually happened in such a blatant, not nice way. Yeah,
so are you thinking that this is primarily or in part because your mother is a senior citizen? Do you think that has something to do with it?
I don't know if it's because she's a senior, because she's an older lady, or what it is. But I know when I called yesterday, this gentleman spoke over me so many times where I had to say, excuse me, I've been a businesswoman my whole life. I have managed more things than probably you've ever had, and bigger businesses. So please do not speak to me like I'm nothing. That's what I had to do. And I went, this is crazy.
Sounds it.
It's insane. So I don't think that many people have a hope on this earth if they're dealing with these individuals in this particular place.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear all that's happening, but if I was you, and of course you'll do as you see fit, but between Service NL and for that organization, CAMVAP, I'd give those two a crack to see if you can make any headway.
All right. Thank you, darling. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome, Sharon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Oh, boy. Break time. And your thoughts on that or anything else, welcome after this. Welcome back to the show. Let's go line number one. Say good morning to the chair of the board of directors at L'Arche Avalon. That's Sheila McKinnon-Drover. Good morning, Sheila. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you, Patty?
Not too bad at all. How about you?
Good. I'm grand. Great, exciting news from L'Arche. We're having our annual yard sale, and it's going to be on Canada Day. So everyone will be off work, and they can come and buy. There's amazing things there for sale, and we're well, you know how long we've been working at our objectives. So we're still plugging away, Patty.
And of course, for folks who don't know, L'Arche Avalon provides services for adults with intellectual disabilities, and that's important to add to this conversation. So inside the yard sale, what kind of stuff, or is it everyone's, I was going to almost said everyone's old grout that they try to sell in their own driveway, but what kind of stuff do you have?
Well, I know one of the things is a pair of inline roller skates with knee pads, practically brand new, and they're not cheap to buy at anywhere, actually. And all kinds of household things. There's some small furniture pieces. Oh my goodness, there's such a variety of things. I know we have suitcases, travel cases, just a little bit of everything. And you know what isn't any good we don't put out, so there's not junk there, you know.
Understood. So where is the yard sale going to be?
It's going to be at the Deluxe Dry Cleaners parking lot on Pennywell Road, 159 Pennywell.
Right across from the rink.
That's it's there at the bottom of Adams Avenue, top of Pennywell. Well, you know, your last call, or one of your previous callers, talked about a feel-good project, and this is a feel-good project. You know, as you said, because you know about L'Arche, we do work for people with intellectual disabilities, and our project is what we're working on, and what we've been working on for years, is to get homes for people with intellectual disabilities. And when I say homes, in the L'Arche sense, it's a home where there's 4 people usually with intellectual disabilities living in a family-like setting, and that's the emphasis, family-like, with some of their assistants are living in. And whatever you would do as a family, that's how the home operates. If people are going out to a party or going out to the shopping mall, and you know, whoever wants to go goes, and it's family-like. And so it is a really feel-good project. We're still working on government to get operating funding. I don't quite understand why we don't have it. There's so much talk, Patty, about housing, as you know, and all the vulnerable population of elderly people. Well, you know, people with intellectual disabilities are even more vulnerable than the seniors. I'm a senior, you know, and I can express myself. I can make my opinion known, but these people can't. And, you know, if somebody doesn't step up to be advocates for people with intellectual disabilities, then, you know, God help us all. I don't know. It's discouraging sometimes.
A good measure of society is how we treat the most vulnerable in society, and I think it's fair to say, whether it be people that you represent and support, and or even just seniors in a broad stroke, and or children and the K-12 system, I think we can all admit to ourselves we have to do a lot better, and that includes support for your organization. Sheila, anything else you'd like to offer this morning?
Well, just to say that, you know, if there are any of our supporters out there, and we do have a lot of supporters, I know, if they would like to come and help on the day, they can just come, or they can get in touch with us at office@larcheavalon.ca, an email. And again, it's on the Deluxe Dry Cleaners lot on Pennywell Road from 10 until 3. Now, if by chance Canada Day is not, is pouring rain or not a good day, we'll have it on the Sunday, which would be the 6th of July. But if that happens, I'll give you a call again, because I know everyone listens to Paddy daily, so we'll be able to get the message out.
Happy to take your call at your convenience, Sheila. Good luck with it.
Thank you very much, Paddy. Appreciate being able to tell your fans about it.
I appreciate your time. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Sheila McKinnon-Drover is the chair of the board of directors at L'Arche Avalon. Let's take a break. And L'Arche is L'Arche, just in case you wanted to Google up and see what they do. Break time. And your thoughts on that or anything else, welcome after this. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the Mayor of Mount Pearl. That's Dave Aker. Mayor Aker, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. How about you?
Oh, good, thanks. Talked to you last Friday, and you asked me if I was reoffering for the mayorship here in the city of Mount Pearl, and I said I'd call you back, and I'm calling back this morning to say that I will be reoffering. It's been my honor to serve for the last 8 years as the mayor of Mount Pearl, and I want to continue with my leadership with the residents of Mount Pearl. I'm a people-first mayor. Mayor Dave is my local name, and Paddy, I'll always put the community first, but good government is also very important, as you can tell from some of the conversations you've been having this morning.
No question. So was there hesitancy in making this decision, or there were still some final boxes to check before you called back today?
No, not really. We, as a family, we decided back around Christmas time. I was up in Ottawa visiting our children, and we had a good chat about it. And I've got their support and friends and family. And as far as I understand, my council colleagues are all reoffering for re-election. And frankly, I think we've had a good 4 years thanks to public engagement and some of the planning we do. Fiscal management is really important to me and to my colleagues. And there's always going to be unfinished business. Municipalities are never perfect, Paddy. There's always something that needs to be done, and this year's election is October 2nd.
And, there'll be 3 elections this year. And the same conversation I had with Jim Parsons and Linda Chason from Cornerbrook yesterday is there is concern out there, I would think, amongst, ardent supporters of one politician or another, the concept of election fatigue. It's going to set in this fall. The federal election has a nice buffer between the fall, and we're going to have a municipal and provincial election at the same time. Any worries on that front?
Well, frankly, don't mean to correct you, there was 4 real campaigns in the go, because we had the Liberal leadership campaign too, and you heard about some of the crossover that occurred as those 2 campaigns got mixed up. But our ballots will clearly indicate who is running for council. You will only be able to indicate with a mark who's running, whether you vote early or vote late. But no doubt the provincial election is going to land right on top of it. I don't know what we're going to do with all the signs at the end of the day. But that's beyond our control, and I suspect that October 2nd is 99% locked in, but you never know. It could be changed. Originally, the date was September 30th, but it was moved because of National Indigenous Reconciliation Day. So you never know what's going to happen, but it's going to happen this fall. We're prepared, and I know the city will be hosting a session for candidates that may want to run, and I'm encouraging everybody to put their hat in the ring. Barbecue season's upon us, Paddy, and it's a good time for any potential candidate or anybody who has concerns or issues, want to talk to the mayor, talk to members of council or future candidates. It's a good time of the year to be out and about.
Yeah, and I'm thinking election fatigue, not only for the voter, but for supporters, for volunteers to work on campaigns and stuff. It's going to be a little bit different sense or vibe to the fall election cycle. And this is a question not offered to be saucy, but simply to be direct. What do you say to the residents of Mount Pearl as to why you deserve to be re-elected as mayor?
Well, I think we've got a good track record. I'm here. I'm kind of a big picture person. We're about the people, but more along the lines for me is the collective. But I can trust that my colleagues will take care of the little things, and that's important too. So when we say we're people oriented, I think we have a good team. And as leader of the team, the mayor's held responsible and accountable for what we've accomplished, and as a gauge, I guess, to correlate with what may happen in the future. But we've had a good team here, I got to say, and we've got great staff. Service delivery are at a premium, second to none when it comes to things like snow clearing. And at the end of the day, Patty, re-elect me because I'm good at working with people. I want to lead. I don't have to make every decision. And I think at the end of the day, as long as we put our residents and our businesses, our city first, we'll be in a good place. And that's basically the commitment I'm giving.
You mentioned things that are left to be done, and I'll point well said and well taken, that municipalities won't always be perfect, and it's an endless cycle of getting things done. But where are the priorities for the City of Mount Pearl for next steps, or things that are yet to be completed, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, the big work in progress right now is housing, I would think, right? We're trying to open up new lands on the north side of Mount Pearl, and that's a work in progress, but we've been slowly building up the related infrastructure that's needed. So that's where planning is the key. On Canmount Road, the Penny Group has some land there, so we're going to see 3 new businesses put in there in the next 12 to 15 months. And on top of it all, there's always infrastructure needs. It's never ending, but, the Commonwealth Avenue Bridge likely is going to have to be replaced. And regionally, we've got the secondary treatment plant down at Riverhead. We may be talking in the next decade about a new water supply for the region, which has seen tremendous growth, especially in the areas of Paradise and CBS. So that when I say things are ongoing, it doesn't mean things are broke. It's just that growth comes with a cost. And in the City of Mount Pearl, we're going to be in a low growth phase. We want to manage that growth, and we want to encourage new young families to move in. As some of the older families in the City of Mount Pearl, some of the empty nest homes, because Patty, we've grown by about 1,000 people in the last couple of years. Our housing stock has increased, but the demographics seem to be working the other way, right? You have small households now, and we're seeing a lot of new families starting to move back into the city. So we're not offering brand new homes in all cases. A lot of them are used and old, but the city has good character, and it's a good place to live.
I appreciate the time, Mayor Aker. Good luck on the hustings.
Thanks, Daddy. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Mount Pearl Mayor Dave Aker. And if anyone plans to challenge the mayor and would like to discuss that particular challenge on the show, they're more than welcome. Let's go to line number 6. Good morning, Charlie. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Hi there.
Paddy, good questions to the Auditor General. I'd like to ask, as far as signing a check, who signs off on these checks? Is it a civil servant in government, or is it the health group?
It would be a civil servant at government. If it's an invoice submitted to government, it would be someone working in the public sector that eventually signs off, yeah. And then there's issues, like remember back to when there was that scandal inside the school board, is that invoices at a certain cost have to be signed off by superiors or supervisors or managers. And in this case, they were invoice splitting so that they could bring things in under $500. No one else has to look. They sign it off as a low-level bureaucrat. I'm not trying to be dismissive of people, but someone who's not at the supervisory or the managerial level. So the short answer is yes, someone in the civil service signs off.
Well, if this is not fraud, I don't know what you would call it, because whoever's charging these amounts, presumably the agency A, and those who are signing off, it seems to me they're either in cahoots or there's a lot of incompetence at the signing off level, in which case there should be jail time or there should be firing. Would you agree with that?
I think if there's an investigation required, an investigation should take place. So for me, of course it's going to be about who, in this case, has been signing off on the contracts, but it's much more about the process and the structure itself, because civil servants will come and go, politicians will come and go. It's if we don't have a sound structure in place, then we're never going to get around to fixing this up. So the verification of things like vehicle rentals for people who aren't even here, accommodations paid for at a 90% premium, overtime that's billed but never verified if it was actually worked. I mean, these are structural things.
I would agree they're structural things, but there's human beings there that are making decisions about what they're charging and about what they're approving. And I guess part of it is this government has been in too long. They've got lots of civil servants, as Danny made sure of that. To me, they should be very efficient in what they're doing at that level with all those people in there, unless they're playing cards all day or something. I just don't get it. It seems like at a certain level, people can get off with murder, and other people at lower levels get charged. I don't know. The whole thing smells to high heaven, and if this doesn't go to the RCMP, there's something awfully wrong. That's my opinion anyway, looking at what she said so far, right?
I don't disagree. And again, maybe we're in the same church, maybe not the same pew, because I think unless you have the policy, protocol, and structure in place, human beings are going to do what human beings do. We're flawed, right? So whether it be people who are oblivious or people who are careless or people who are incompetent, many of those things can be addressed if there's a checklist of protocols that have to be followed before anyone strikes a check in response to an invoice. So that's where, it's kind of the type of the conversation we had with Denise Hanrahan this morning is we can identify 49 public sector workers who broke conflict of interest in these 53 lease agreements. But if there are some hard and fast rules about conflict of interest and consequences for breaking or breaching, then I think we kind of change the water on the beans here a little bit. Because if we just leave it up to the willy-nilly decision-making of human beings, we're destined to make some bad decisions here.
I thought a lot of these protocols were in place, were put in place over the years. I thought it was just people who were ignoring them. That's kind of what Mike was talking about, right?
Well, I mean, for instance, in the conflict of interest, we don't oblige the staff to sign on to it. We can post it. It's just like putting a mission statement on the wall at your business. It's all fine and dandy, but unless there's protocols for our staff to adhere directly to, then it's just a piece of paper. Same thing with conflict of interest. We can assume people understand where the conflict resides. We can assume people understand how to avoid being mired in a conflict of interest. But unless they have to sign it and understand it and what the consequences are, then we're just sort of talking human resources babble.
They were warned about this, as the PC leader said 2 years ago. I can remember the controversy. The fact that they didn't publish a report or were swept under the rug strikes me as that they had to know that something was going on there. Why wouldn't they have made it public?
Agreed.
Again, Paddy, I think they've been in too long, and it seems to happen with any government that stays in power after 8 to 10 years,
Well, that's kind of what we do is, and it's not whether or not, and this is not about the Liberals or the Tories of today, is we just, as voters, we see a party as running its course, and then we just change horses. And that's what we've done in this province consistently over the decades since 1949. And I'll use that once again, and this is not me and you debating anything. I'll try to use that to bolster my point. A new party in the seat of government doesn't necessarily change anything, because that's where things that are going to be hard and fast protocols and structures where if you don't abide by it, heads will roll, as they say, regardless if it's the Liberals or the Tories or the Dippers or Independents at the seat of government. That's where I think we look big picture, long term, protocols in place, consequences understood, regardless of who the Premier is or who's sitting in Cabinet or who's sitting as a Deputy Minister or an Assistant Deputy Minister. That's kind of where I am.
I kind of agree with you on that, but at least a change. You can expect some change in some of these things that the Auditor General is pointing out. With the same group in there, they just get set in their ways. And anyway, I'd like to go to the NATO thing and what's happening there. Just for a quick comment.
Okay.
I don't understand this sudden need, not only for 2%, which we weren't doing, of our national budget. Now he's talking 5%. The Russians can't even handle the Ukraine army. Their economy is less than Italy's. Suddenly, we have to go up to 5%, spending all these billions of dollars that are needed in the country. It seems to me we're being blackmailed by Trump. He's saying if you don't go up there, we'll leave. And of course, they don't want the U.S. to leave. That would be disastrous. And as far as that, over 10 years, I think they're just playing along till he gets out. But a 5% thing for any nation is ridiculous. The other thing, beside Trump getting a performance thing and showing who's boss, the arms industry in the States would benefit from these NATO countries spending 5%, you know?
Absolutely. We procure 70% of our defense spending contracts with the United States of America. People rightfully call the United States as a military-industrial complex, and it is. So they would benefit enormously from the procurement contracts. The United States at this point spends about 3.5% of GDP on defense. So it really feels like this is driven by wealth versus defense, money and greed versus security. It's an arbitrary number plucked out of nowhere. Same thing with 2%, but now 5%? It's going to cost us every bit of $150 billion a year at our current level of GDP. So I don't know, man. Everyone thinks, oh, this is excellent. What's so excellent about it? I mean, fueling more conflict kind of seems like a strange way to approach safety and security. But anyway, anything else quickly, Charlie, because I got to get going.
Yeah, just on the strike against Iran, there's good information that trucks took out a lot of this stuff beforehand because those Iranians are not stupid people. And as far as a total devastation, that's poppycock and its performance again, right?
It'd be nice to have some.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, fair enough, Charlie. Appreciate the time.
Okay,
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty, bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Deanne, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm okay. How about you?
Oh, pretty good. I just want to talk about something I seen the other day. I don't know who these people are, just right up front. I noticed there was a drug deal going on, 2:30 in the afternoon. There were 3 men standing out in front of a black vehicle. And the reason why I know this is because one man had a vial in his hand and he was shaking it, and the vial was blue. So from my understanding, usually if there's something blue, it's cocaine maybe. And I seen this over in an area where there's kids, and this was very open, didn't have a care in the world.
I don't know what it would be if it's something blue in a vial. I really honestly don't know. I mean, it could be crystal methane, it could be a variety of things, but regardless of what the drug is, it's pretty brazen. I mean, there are places where you can see a drug deal go down 9 o'clock in the morning, right out in public view. People aren't trying to hide. Seemingly gone are the days where it was all conducted in the shadows. Now it's right there in the bright sunlight, and people just feels like they just don't care.
They don't care. They really don't care. And the thing about it as well is that there's I called the police, okay, just to let them know, because I thought that was I was shocked. I was literally shocked. And so I called the RNC and just the general inquiries, and I explained what had happened. And then they asked if, would I mind somebody called me back? And I said no, and she was kind of surprised. And because, I mean, to me, that's a concern. That's when is it going to be that they're going to accidentally give it to a child, or not even accidentally give it to a child, just sell it to a kid or just get a kid hooked? I don't think there's an age requirement for addicts.
They're not showing ID, nope.
No, and I find this very concerning. And like you said, they're brazen. They're either brazen or they're really stupid, to openly do this.
Yeah, you can be both.
Yeah.
And people say you don't get high in your own supply. I wonder how many of the dealers are also deeply addicted. And what we do know is that if you are indeed addicted, whether it be as the customer and or the dealer, good decisions are hard to come by. So whether it be the combination of oblivious or addicted or don't care or being brazen, whatever it is the category they fall into, it's out there everywhere. There are certain pockets of the city, I can only speak, with any type of quote-unquote authority to what happens in the city where I live, but man, oh man, you can see it as plain as day, and people say, why don't the police respond? It's a fair question. The police probably know a lot more about what's going on than I do, but the question is, if they know, why not act on it? You know, you can't be all the time only looking for the so-called big fish, the organized criminal, the shot caller. I mean, if we're seeing drug deals being executed on the corner at the middle of the day, why isn't there something done? I've always wondered that myself.
Yeah, me too. And another thing that I was wondering, and I thought about it a few times, is like when, for an example, it's on VOCM news that you see a big drug deal. All the money is there, the guns are there, all the drugs and everything is there. What happens to the money? Do it go back to the victims of addiction, or like where does it go? Because they talk about like big chunks of change that they confiscated, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and where's this money go? That's something as me as a citizen, I'd like to know, considering they spent a lot of money to find these people. So does it go back to the RNC? Like, where does it go?
I think it remains in the hands of law enforcement. Now, it's a very good question.
Forever. Yeah,
nope.
They can't burn it. You know, it's like I can understand if they were burning like drugs and stuff to get rid of it, but you're not going to burn money. That's crazy. You know, so like in my opinion, I think that money should go into addict rehabilitation or like homelessness or something, or donate it to a food bank or the SPCA or something. You know, turn something bad and make it really good.
Yeah, fair enough. That's an excellent question. So I quietly just try to get us an answer. So there is a piece of legislation that's been in effect since 1993 in this country called the Seized Property Management Act. The Act gave the Government of Canada the authority to provide consultative managerial services, blah, 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 dispose of seized property when the courts declare forfeiture. They manage assets such as cash, equities, loans, registered retirement savings plans, bank accounts, lottery tickets, life insurance policies, vehicles, motorcycles, boats, houses, jewelry, furniture, electronics. Post-seizure, see if there's a direct relationship or a direct mention of money.
Right.
I don't know, but I'm going to figure that one out, because that is an excellent question, because you're right. When they take the opportunity to display the cash, is usually lots of it.
Oh, yeah, because that's the only time they advertise. They don't do the little corner dealers. They're going after the big fish.
Yeah.
They want that notoriety, you know. And I want to know what they do with the money.
Well, because there's not really a photo opportunity if you catch someone with 3 grams of hash, you know.
No.
It's when there's 300 grams of cocaine. I'm going to get an answer to that. I'm glad you planted that seed, Deanne, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Patty. I hope you have a wonderful day.
The very same to you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, Ernest wants to talk about a demonstration planned. Where? We'll find out. Rhoda wants to talk about the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding. Fred wants to talk about healthcare, and then whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Paul, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi. I was just listening to your last caller there, wondering about the money.
Yep.
If memory serves me right, someone was busted a couple of years ago, and there was a huge amount of money, excess of $1 million. And if memory serves me right, he went to court and got that money back because he hadn't been proven guilty in a court of law, right? So I guess realistically, until you're proven guilty in a court of law, that's, still your money, right?
You're right. And I know exactly who you're talking about as well. And he's gone to be charged with a variety of things like murder. Okay. So a listener named Stephen has sent along copious amounts of information about the forfeiture processes in the country and in the province. So apparently, of course, it's kept by law enforcement throughout the court process. In some provinces, it can be returned to people who the money belongs to. But, of course, the vast majority, and I'm just paraphrasing because it's a pretty long note that he sent, the vast majority stays in the hands of law enforcement and reinvested into the organization to enhance their ability to investigate and to process crimes and all the evidence into the future. Victim services, crime prevention initiatives. So, yeah, apparently there's a bunch of different ways it's treated, and it varies from province to province in some form. Apparently, you can indeed make applications to the federal courts on this front too. So there's a long answer to that very fundamental question.
Yeah, because you're not guilty, eh?
Yeah, well, until you're found guilty, of course, then why would it be anybody's money but yours? But that's a fair point.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Appreciate it.
All right, bye.
Okay, bye-bye. So just once again, this is a paraphrase, but they can indeed share with other jurisdictions. Significant portion of the funds may be shared with the provincial or municipal governments whose law enforcement agencies were involved in the investigation, funding crime prevention and victim services, supporting law enforcement. So there's a long answer to a pretty great question. All right, let's keep going. Let's stick with the courts. Let's go to line number 1. Ernest, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty, how you doing?
Great today. How about you?
Not too bad. Patty, we're having a little demonstration down in front of the Atlantic Place for my brother, Egder. It's a Justice for Egder. What we're doing, you have to excuse me a little bit. It's been a trying time for the whole family. We're having a little demonstration down there for Egder. The guy that's accused is coming up on bail now, 2 o'clock, and we don't want to see him out.
Can you help me understand what this case is?
This is the case where the guy on Sudbury Street was murdered.
So is this the charge against, I think it was reported like a 23-year-old man who beat an older gentleman to death? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, Patty, that is the case.
Okay.
Yes. I should have clarified it in the beginning. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. No apologies required. I just want to make sure the listeners know what we're talking about.
Okay, yes, yeah. He's the guy that the guy was out on probation, and anyway, Egder anyway succumbed to the injuries that he had, and we just he's coming up on bail, and we just don't want to see him back out on the street.
Yeah. So today is the bail hearing, I guess.
Yes, the bail hearing is the day. Yes, sir. So I just wanted to put it out there that, Al's welcome to come down to support us.
And, of course, at this point in time, it's allegations yet to be moved through the court system. Can you tell us a bit about Egder?
Yeah, I can, actually. I'm glad you asked. Egder worked his whole life, Paddy. Egder was a rotational worker. He was camp boss on Zeros for many years. And recently he went up to Boise Bay. He was just supposed to go back to work now July the 2nd, which obviously that's not going to happen. And he was getting ready to retire next year. And that's been all taken away from him.
I'm really sorry for your loss, number one, Ernest. And we'll see what becomes of this bail hearing and consequently what becomes of the trial. Obviously, one of the more serious charges anybody can face. And people will justifiably ask questions about, if you're charged with a violent crime, should there even be the opportunity for bail? Now, everybody has the right to apply for bail and a bail hearing to be conducted. But when violent charges are part of it, I think people understandably wonder how and why anyone can get out on bail if that's the charge.
Well, I hope it do come out that the injuries that he received were extensive. Right? Me, myself, personally, I was in there when they took the hoses off him, and Paddy, no man should have to go through what he went through. Right?
Yeah.
So this guy should not be on the street.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's appropriate for you and I to get into the circumstances surrounding this alleged crime, but, you know, ultimately what I can say is I'm sorry for your loss. My condolences to all the family and friends who were part of Edgar's life.
Yes, I appreciate that, Patty. And as I said before, we're having a demonstration, and we'd like some support.
Fair enough. So what time is this all taking place, Ernest?
1 o'clock, in front of Atlantic Place.
I appreciate your time. You take good care of yourself.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome, Ernest. All the best.
Oh, okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I actually know someone else who's part of that family, one of his nephews, Oh, boy. Let's see here. Let's take a break. Rod, you stay right there. We're going to come back and talk about the Memorandum of Understanding regarding the Upper Churchill expansion to the 2 transmission projects, the possibility for Gull Island to be developed, and then whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Rod. You're on the air.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Not too bad. I wanted to give you a call today because...
Just one second, Rod. We've got to get you a clearer phone line. Man, oh, man. Let's go to line number 2. Fred, you're on the air. Hi, Fred.
Hi.
Back to back. Sorry, Fred. Put you on hold. Let's go to line number 1. Randy, you're on the air.
Hello, boy.
Hello there.
I live on Courtney Street, right? In Kilbride.
Okay.
And there's trucks, cars, campers parked right on the corner. They'll go around in your lane before you turn. There's going to be an accident there.
So we're talking about just straight up illegal parking. Is that what you were saying, Randy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why park around the corner for?
Excellent question. I don't know.
Or a camper or a car, whatever.
And so is it because you're not allowed to park there, or something to do with visibility, or what?
You shouldn't park on the corner of a street.
I tend to agree, obviously. So your worry is that hampers people's ability to see what's coming, like the visibility concern?
Me and my friend came around home.
Okay.
And we're around the corner, and there was another car coming up. Now, he was in the roadway, but we weren't.
Okay.
But we got to go over on the left side to get around the corner.
Yeah, people are just either ignorant of the law or they simply don't care. One or the other, maybe both.
Now, I hope the police listen to me right now and take it to them who stand on the corner or parks on the corner.
Okay. So if there's a squad car in the area and you see what Randy is describing, maybe you can do something about it. I appreciate the time, Randy. Thanks a lot.
Especially when youngsters are around that area.
For sure.
Some of them, when the youngsters are on skateboards or whatever they're on, there's some going to be killed.
Hope not. It's not that long ago. There was a little boy killed on his bike. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, me buddy.
Thanks, Randy.
You have a good weekend.
You too, buddy.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And, just someone called about parking in the fire lane. It was one day this week. And just yesterday, driving home my standard route, going down Newfoundland Drive, there was someone with pulled up 2 wheels on the curb to try to get out of the way of traffic, I suppose, even though it's a pretty wide road. You don't need to be on the curb. And then further down Newfoundland Drive, someone parked right on top of the crosswalk. Right on top of the crosswalk. You don't need to be intimately understanding every in and out of the Highway Traffic Act, but you'd think people would realize if you have enough sense between the ears to get a driver's license, that you probably should understand the fact you can't park on crosswalks. Anyway, let's go. Line number 4. Rod, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. That's on our end.
Right on. Okay. So I want to talk to you about the deal, the potential hydroelectric deal between Quebec and Newfoundland, because, I know we have some time yet before, the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. But there's a lot about it that I feel uncomfortable with, and I just wanted to raise it this morning, as an issue, see if we can't get people more interested and involved in this process, because I don't feel, based on what I've read, what I've seen, people who I've read and their opinions about it, I don't feel like we're getting that great of a deal.
Where would you like to start?
Well, so I guess my first point is that, this process has no oversight, and the longer we let this leave and tick on, we're basically going towards a contract again without people having the ability to fully understand it and understand its implications. I think that this is one of the most consequential projects in our history that we're currently deciding now, and I don't feel as if we've learned from our past mistakes. Neither of the previous 2 projects, certainly Muskrat Falls, was subjected to any kind of impartial quantitative oversight. And I feel as if that we're doing the same thing again. If it's a good deal, and I don't doubt that it potentially could be, I realize that we're not in the greatest of bargaining positions. I mean, our finances are terrible. We're dying for an extra dollar to finance public services and to deal with our debt and so on and so forth. And if this were to come about, it would do an awful lot to help us out. But I would just wonder if we're getting nearly as good a deal or what we should be getting based on the facts and the current situation, notwithstanding our poor negotiating position.
I understand your point of view here. For me, Muskrat and this are two pretty different issues. The biggest problem for Muskrat, as we figured out during the LeBlanc inquiry, is that we didn't even have the information that was readily available inside the doors in the offices at Newfoundland Labrador Hydro to actually give it a good comprehensive review. I mean, they withheld some information even from cabinet, withheld information from premiers. So that alone is scandalous. So with this, at least the starting point of a memorandum of understanding, the different moving parts are out there. We're told we're going to get reports back from the 3-person oversight committee, we'll call it, and that's of course chaired by Dennis Brown. And so specifically in here, what gives you the most pause for concern? Is it one part or another? Is it gall? Is it the transmission lines? Is it what?
Okay, well, it's a few things. First of all, I was reading an article in the Globe and Mail just a few days ago. It was published on June 20th and updated on the 23rd, and it's entitled "How Quebec and Newfoundland Overcame Centuries of Whatever to Do a Deal." I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's worth a read. It's an excellent article. In it, they talk about they lay out a couple of facts. Number one was that the cost of replacement. If we were to end the contract today, turn off the electricity, and Quebec had to find another source, and they had to build it, and they had to provide it to somebody, sell it to somebody, and achieve a price that made sense, they would be looking somewhere between 11 and 13 cents replacement costs. Do you know how much we're going to get under the new deal?
I do.
On Churchill Falls? Yeah, how much?
Well, it's not just one. Pardon me?
Yeah, but it's 4 cents, right? Like we have like they're going to get between 11 and 13, and we will just say we'll use 12, use the midpoint. This also is no big deal. We're going to get 4 cents.
That's not what the schedule says.
Well, what does the schedule say?
So for just some base numbers, we're going to move, and this is a progressive thing. It's not an immediate jump. It's from 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour to 5.9 cents per kilowatt hour between now and 2041. So that's one thing. The revenues are guesstimated at this moment in time is an average of $1 billion a year for the next 17 years. And then into the future, $2 billion 2044, $6 billion in 2060 are some of the numbers that the schedule says. This is not my numbers. These are the numbers that I read from the MOU.
That's right. Right. That's what I saw too. But what you don't know, or what I don't know, is how much are you getting per kilowatt. That graph, I know the graph you're referring to. It's the graph that goes from 1 or whatever it is up to 9, way out in 2070 or something. Yeah. But the question I have is how much do we get per kilowatt hour for the duration of the Churchill contract? I don't want to see the large numbers, 1 billion. I want to see how much do we get of the Churchill Falls power. And you understand why I'm asking that, obviously.
Of course, I do. Important questions. So up to on the way to 41, it's 5.9 cents.
Which is not even half. It's barely half. It's under half. It's not even half. Do you know that on the spot market, the last quarter, they got upwards of 16 cents a kilowatt hour.
Who did?
16. Hydro-Quebec, on the power that they sold into the United States, which is what they are. They're a reseller of power. So they depend on contracts plus spot market. They sell some just here and there kind of thing, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad.
But now 16 cents, where does that number come from? Because I looked at the spot market on Monday and it was, I think, 2.1 cents.
No. Well, this is a number that I believe I read. I think it was Dave Vardy or somebody. He was quoting a report that January, February, and March, the first quarter of this year. Now, it's a report I read, so maybe it's wrong. But anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole too far, because really what I wanted to call about, like the replacement cost, for example, when Francis Legault was negotiating this, and they came out with they wanted an option. They said, look, I don't want to go to Newfoundland and negotiate this deal with no backup. You saw that in the article.
Yep.
And they threw out a figure of 155 to 185 billion to come up with replacement of 9,000 megawatts of power. Now, the amount of money that's being thrown at, say, the other projects, Golan and what have you, that doesn't come even close to that, 155 to 185. So we're definitely doing them a favor by offering up this power and these assets to be developed at a much lower cost than they would as an alternative. I just wonder if we're getting the full value of Churchill Falls, because this thing, to me, is a cash cow. We own it. We know that the replacement costs are between 11 and 13 cents. And, I'm not looking today to right all the wrongs of the past, but it seems clear to me that we should be getting at least the majority of that benefit very quickly. And I don't even think it should be 2041. I think it should be much sooner than that. We should be getting 6.1 cents and they get 5.9. That's day one. That's just my opinion.
Listen, and I'm glad you're sharing your opinion. I'll just throw this out there for your response or perspective. When we look at this memorandum of understanding, it's extremely complicated because we're not just talking about one thing. We're not just talking about Upper Churchill power that's generated today, because we're also talking about expanding the Upper Churchill capacity. We're also talking about quadrupling the Labrador recall block. We're also talking about two different transmission projects. We're also talking about the development of over 2,200 megawatts at Gull. So that makes it for me, and I'm not the sharpest tack in the board, but it makes it very difficult for me to assess overall benefit, overall bang for buck, overall whether or not we got the best deal possible, because if you look at just one project, then we're kind of missing a big part of the conversation, which is the other three projects.
And I agree with you 100% on what you just said, but that is deliberate. If we were to go a different route and do scenario A versus scenario B, let's call scenario A what it is now. It's Churchill Falls and all in, and let's obfuscate the situation. Okay? It makes it very hard for people to understand. Like, I wonder how people feel now about the project. I don't know if you've seen any public opinion surveys, et cetera, about where people are on this project, and do they, A, have enough information to make their decision, and B, do they support it today as it is? I mean, I think people deserve a chance to have a say on this. If we're not going to put it towards a third-party oversight like PUB or something like that, that would help us to address the concerns that were raised in that inquiry that we had back after Muskrat Falls, people deserve a say on it. Either that, or subject it to the technical unbiased oversight so that people can actually have good numbers and a parsing of the issues that you're talking about. Because if we were just pursuing Churchill Falls on its own and nothing else, the information and your ability to see through, to the end would be much easier and clearer. And that's deliberately done. That's the way Hydro-Quebec wanted to do it, and our own government went along with it because it seemed good to, an awful lot of good pieces here. But are we in the end and in the total going to get the best deal that we can get?
It's a good question. In reference to the PUB, I think we can kind of eliminate the PUB here, and here's why I think that. Because they're not set up to do this type of evaluation. What they would do is simply bring in a company that we could bring in without using the PUB, whether it be, Deloitte or Goldman Sachs or Manitoba Hydro or whoever, to assess the deal, because that's what they would do. They're a regulatory body. I don't think they have the horsepower to do the examination that I think you and I both want done. So to go to whatever that oversight is, we can just do it as a province. We don't need to ask the PUB. We don't need to do anything. We just simply have to hire a company that people would have some faith in to give this a good overview. Now,
and I agree with that. And that would be the better option. I would check that box.
Now, the background of people like Dennis Brown and the two gentlemen who round up that three-party committee, they do have pretty extensive background in engineering and accounting and in hydro directly related matters. Carl Smith, former chief financial officer of Fortis, was on the negotiating team to begin with, so we've got some good input up till now. It's does the voter, the taxpayer, have that required additional layer of comfort with said oversight as you suggest? It doesn't look like we're going to do it, but I think we probably should. Rod, I got to get to the news, but I'll give you the floor for the last thought.
It's a consequential project.
Yep.
I think that people need to get more interested. I think that we should have some mechanism to measure people's feelings about how they feel about this project in terms of are they comfortable with it? Are they not? Is there something else they need? And I think that oversight would address all of that.
I appreciate your time, Rod. Thanks for doing it.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, news time.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Fred, you're on the air.
Hi there, Paddy. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How about you?
Not too bad, Paddy. I'm still having trouble with the new mental health place.
And describe your troubles to the listener.
I goes in there and you keep sending me home.
So, Fred, when you go to the new mental health and addictions facility, what are you telling the triage nurse? What are you saying is your issue?
I told her that I'm feeling suicidal and that if I go home, I'd hang myself, and he still sends me home.
Do they ever tell you why, Fred?
No, they don't. They don't give me no reason.
So, do you have ongoing counseling, whether it be a psychiatrist or a psychologist?
No, I don't have a psychiatrist and I don't have a family doctor.
So what do you do to try to get some help, other than going to the new hospital? What do you do?
I just keep going back and forth to a different emergency department.
And all they do is send you home?
Yeah.
So, do you actually feel that way today?
Yes, I do, Paddy.
Is there anything we can do to help?
I don't know, Paddy, because right now I'm all waking up every morning depressed and suicidal.
Have you been diagnosed with anything, Fred? Do you take any...
Schizophrenic.
And so, as a diagnosed schizophrenic, you still don't have anybody assigned to you who's a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist or psychiatrist?
No, I don't.
Have you ever tried to deal directly with, say, for instance, the Schizophrenia Association?
No, I haven't, no.
Do you think that would be helpful?
Would be if I had the number.
I can find that for you.
Yeah.
Association. Okay, I got it. Here you go. Do you have a pen or a pencil handy and a piece of paper?
I can remember it.
Okay, so it's 777
777
3335.
3335.
Yeah.
All right, Paddy, thank you.
Make that call now, Fred.
Okay, bud, thanks.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. You know, when we hear stuff like that, you know, what has to happen? Like, one of the concerns people talk about with the new mental health and addictions facility is that it has even fewer beds than was in the old Waterford, which had to go. It had seen its best before date. But the fewer beds has been a general concern that's offered by many. The NL Health Services say that they're putting more supports in the community where people are. I'm not exactly sure what that means or what those community-based supports look like. But what does anybody have to say when presenting at the new mental health and addictions facility, which I think should probably get a name of some sort? What do people need to say to be able to get some help or treatment or to be admitted? Because you would think that the an utterance is that you are experiencing suicidal ideations, or you plan to bluntly come out and say, I'm going to go home and die by suicide. You think that would be exactly what needs to be said, or how people would feel to actually get into the churn to get some help. So I'm at a loss as to how things like that happen. And I mean, I'm not there. I don't know exactly who said what or who they spoke to. But you would think that would be the be-all and end-all to get in and to get some help. He's already dealing with an official diagnosis, and maybe there's some supports or a direction that Fred can get pointed to or at via the Schizophrenia Society of Newfoundland and Labrador. We do speak with them regularly here on the show. That's Susan Hyde, right, Dave? Yeah. So maybe we'll get Susan back on here in the near future to talk about the type of issues that, Dave tells me she's calling tomorrow. Fantastic. So maybe we'll get a bit of helpful information from Susan as to not only the diagnosis of schizophrenia and some of the myths surrounding it, but exactly what happens when people she represents and the family she tries to help when they present, like Fred says he has, at the new mental health facility. Let's take our final break in the morning. When we come back, still a segment left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number one and say good morning to Joe Power. Joe seeking the PC nomination in the voting district of Lab West. Good morning, Joe. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How you doing?
Very well. How about you?
Not too bad, sir. Been a little while since I spoke to you.
Welcome back to the program. So, have you taken a swing at provincial politics in the past, Joe?
No, I haven't, Paddy. I just retired as fire chief here for Times Labrador City about a year ago. And politics have been piquing my interest for a little while. So, back in January, February, I put my name forward for the PC nomination for Labrador West, and I was successful there in obtaining that. And now we're trying to put together a campaign team here and put a good job on for the PC party to win the seat in Labrador West.
Joe, it's an interesting time in Lab West for a variety of reasons, also including there won't be an incumbent. Jordan Brown isn't running again, so it's a wide open door. Sometimes, obviously, incumbents do have a bit of an advantage, name recognition and a bit of a track record, politically speaking. Well, that can also hurt them. But what do you make of the fact that there isn't an incumbent to run against?
Well, right now, first of all, I'd like to thank Jordan for representing us in the last 6 years. Jordan was well spoken in that and always spoke up for Labrador West. But right now, the Liberals have a great candidate in position here, and looks like the NDP are trying to put somebody into the race as well, another good candidate. So I consider it probably a good old-fashioned race here with the three good candidates in place for the election.
Where do you bring down the focus? Because, of course, from the outside looking in, Jordan Brown seemed to be a pretty good constituency man. Whether or not people agree with that in the district, they can, of course, have their own opinion. So where do we start here? Because we talk about this cycle of boom and bust and requirement of housing and long-term care and fire suppression services. So where would you like to start your focus, Joe?
Well, I've been out knocking doors, Paddy, and people are telling us here, like, healthcare is a big concern. Seniors housing and housing in general, like you just said now, are the buster boom here, and most of the time for the mining community, and housing is a big issue here. There's nowhere for people to come in that wants jobs here in the mining community. There's nowhere to come in for to rent or buy. The housing crunch here is a big issue. The cost of living here is an issue. The cost of travel in and out of Labrador is especially a big issue here. The costs. I went out for a doctor's appointment myself here 2 weeks ago, and my wife had to come with me because I need an escort, and it cost us $4,000 just to go out for one day for a doctor's appointment. And a lot of residents are telling me that they're tired of being forgotten here in Labrador West. It's time for a change, Paddy.
Where's the answer? Pardon me. Where's the answer in air travel? I mean, people try to tell me it's as fundamental, it's as simple as competition. Where's the answer for you, Joe?
Well, there is no competition. That's probably one of the biggest problems. We could leave here all winter and fly to Quebec to watch a hockey game, or go out there for an appointment, or even go out shopping for $500. And like I said, it's costing us $1,800 to go to St. John's, whether it's for medical or it's whether to go out and see a sporting event or a concert, or even to go home and see your relatives. It's expensive, but I think the biggest problem here is there is no competition.
Yeah, it's certainly part of it. You know, the late Pat White at Eva's there, he was talking about, he was formulating a strategy to get into Labrador to possibly, bolster said competition. And let's bounce around a couple before we run out of time. Housing. So we do know with opportunity comes infrastructure needs, whether it be access to healthcare, childcare, and yes, housing. People talk about it as being a government responsibility solely. My thoughts is that the companies themselves should play a more active role on that front. What do you think?
I think it's all in the approach, Paddy, how we seek about going and making housing better here in Labrador West. We have to sit down with all levels of government, and you are right, we have to sit down with the companies as well. And it's how you approach these companies and how you approach the government in obtaining a deal here to make housing better than what it is. Like even seniors housing here, Paddy, like we had seniors complex here now that I know talking to a lot of seniors, they're looking forward to a seniors complex here, seniors living. Right now, that would put up 40 or 50 houses here that will be available for other people to move into. The seniors are interested in moving into a complex and selling their homes, but right now we have nothing here.
Yeah. I mean, even if we talk about a direct component of the benefits agreement, not just about royalties or what have you, but money specifically from royalties and or the tax base that are earmarked for housing right away. So as opposed to just flows to the government and then we see what happens and see who makes what type of decision, really should, just have a very specific amount of money allotted for housing.
Yes, for sure, Paddy. There's space available. Both towns are willing to make space available here, and we're trying the best to come up with ideas for housing and that, but we're not having no success here. Like I said, for taxes and the revenues that's coming out of Labrador West here, a lot of people are, again, when you're out there knocking, a lot of people are saying that we're not getting a fair shake here for the money that's coming out of Labrador West.
That's been the case and the sentiment coming from Lab West for decades, no question. Anything else quickly, Joe, before I sneak one more call on?
Yeah, Petty, we're just hosting a little event here tonight at the Carroll Curling Club. We're calling it Coffee and Conversation, and we're looking for some volunteers to help us out with our campaign and that, and we're trying to engage more people in the community to get out and vote. The voting numbers here in the last 2 or 3 provincial elections have been really low. So we're trying to engage a lot of people, a lot of younger people to get out and vote this time.
Like you should. It's people talk about it being a civic responsibility. Taking the opportunity to vote is worthwhile effort, in my personal opinion. Joe, I appreciate the time. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome, Joe. All the best. Here we go. Joe Power, the PC candidate, Lab West. Final word goes to Chris. You're on the air. Whoa. Chris.
Paddy.
Yes.
Are you on the line?
Pardon me?
Paddy, I only got a couple of minutes, but look, you're talking about putting a sign over on South Side Hill. It's great. When I was involved in politics, I wanted to see a sign go up on Confederation Building Hill so we could see where the expenses and the money is going. It's outrageous, Paddy, where the $500,000 gone again. We cannot sustain that kind of energy. We've got to give that up.
What specifically are you referring to there, Chris? I'm sorry?
Well, a little while ago, the general came out and she said that we're $500,000 in expenses that was illegally paid out, shopping centres, electrical cars, and if we put a sign up on Confederation Building to show the people where the money is going, well, maybe we get somewhere. But we really need something like that so we can see where all the money has been sent. Because we cannot go on and watch people taking money and spending it and not being held accountable for it, Paddy. It's just not right.
I totally agree. Is exactly what I said off the top of the show. If it's incompetence, that's one thing. But if it's people knowingly and willfully doing something that's, forget conflict of interest, if these are examples of criminal fraud, they should be prosecuted like criminals.
Yes, and Paddy, like I said, election coming up soon. So any of the senior elites that have been in politics or have been in any high profiles. Well, I advise them to go sign up as an independent. And we have to put some more independence in there so that we can keep an eye on our government officials, Paddy, and make sure they're doing their job, because it's just ridiculous to see people walking the streets like starving and falling out of their clothes, and then we hear about $500,000 being wasted, and there's people out there that are not well going around killing 60-year-olds. Oh, Paddy, I can't take this anymore, my friend.
I know where you're coming from. People are exasperated and maybe even exhausted. Chris, you've had the final word. Thanks for calling.
All the safe.
You too, buddy. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, there you go. Good show today. Big thanks to all the supporters of the program, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.